the most important piece, even more important than the exercise and taking care of me, is sleep.
Yeah.
So appropriate enough sleep. So
what's that mean?
Well, Arch told us, he said, by the time you finish with me, you all are going to be experts on sleep. So I can talk about sleep a long time. But what it means, Ryan, there's a lot to this, but the most important segment of sleep comes in the final segment, which is 7.5. Nobody's going to like this. I don't like it. But your head is on the pillow. It doesn't mean you're asleep. And sometimes you think you're awake when you're asleep. That happens all the time. The brain is still surface, but the body's healing. So the body primarily heals, and I can explain this more detail, but the body's primarily healing during the first 5 segments of sleep. The brain heals during what we call REM sleep, rapid eye movement, or dream sleep. In the first segment, which is 90 minutes, each segment is 9 minutes long, we wake up in between as we're transitioning segments. Whether we know it or not, we're waking up every 90 minutes. Anybody wants to look at a clock, when they're up to go to the bathroom, they're going to figure out it's on a 90-minute interval.
Huh.
And so in the first interval, we get 2 to 3 minutes REM sleep. In the 5th interval, which is 6 hours to 7.5 hours of head on the pillow, you get 10 to 11 minutes REM sleep. If you're able to sleep, that's a big if, because if you've caffeinated and are stimulated with any other drugs besides caffeine as well, or if you haven't exercised enough to wear your body down to prepare you for head on the pillow that long, you may not be asleep. Yeah. We may not be sleeping from 6 to 7.5. But if I am both not stimulated, if I'm not super stressed and I don't stress myself with chemicals, and then I'm able and I've exercised enough to wear my body down to my body needed the recovery for 7.5 hours, I'm still asleep. Then from 7.5 to 9 hours head on the pillow, we get 43 to 45 minutes REM sleep. REM sleep is when the brain heals. REM sleep is when we get all kinds of stuff going on. That's when our memories are made. That's when our memories are shifted short-term to long-term. That's when primarily we're dealing with memory bank stuff. But also there's an organ right at the very base of the brain, at the top of the brain stem, called the hippocampus. The hippocampus produces millions and millions of brain cells every night during REM sleep. So all of those cells are being distributed through the brain, through the spinal column, spinal cord, replenishing the neurons that are diminishing and worn out and dying. The old memories that the brain says, okay, that can be discarded. That's what it does. That memory is contained in a cell, and that cell dies. And another cell that's just been produced is going to replace it. And that's so cool, because they tell us now with Alzheimer's and dementia, one thing they certainly know is that the chromosomes at the very end have the telomere that is like the coating on the end of a shoestring that keeps the shoestring from unraveling. Likewise, the chromosomes have these, they're called telomere, the coating that keeps the chromosome from unraveling. But with chronic stress, we know that the coating is slowly diminishing, and that chromosome is unraveling and then breaking off.
Yeah.
And it's shortening. And so when they die, when they do the autopsies on Alzheimer's, this is stuff that they found. And they know that this is what's going on. So what's also going on, if I give myself to that REM sleep, is I get brand new neurons that's going to go replace all of those failing and dying. Also, if I don't give myself to REM sleep, I will go into depression. And literally, the hippocampus will shrink by 1/3 in size. Almost, it goes to 30%. It shrinks down over 30% in size. And because I'm not giving its time to replenish.
So even
And so,
people that feel that they're okay on 4 or 5 hours of sleep or 6 hours of sleep, they're in the long run, they're doing damage to their brain.
And I'm
is
so sad that it's that way, and we can't beat it. There may be, freaks of nature
Yeah,
occasionally. That's a
yeah,
terrible way to say it, but
but
people that
outliers.
what I'm telling you was developed by NASA under the order of President Clinton in 1990 something another, because of Alzheimer's and dementia being so prevalent in America. Clinton ordered a sleep study. NASA performed it and did it in outer space. And so what's gone on over the last 20 years is the coffee industry's taken off like crazy. And so people love their coffee. Starbucks spikes its coffee 20% more caffeine to make it more addictive. And so what that does is stimulate us more. Caffeine is a stimulant.
Mm-hmm.
So, but at any rate, the industry can reach out to any university that is glad to publish any report that they want, whatever analysis or results, and the university can produce that and just be selective in the criteria and not tell everybody what the criteria is and only say, here's the outcomes. And they're not given, those university studies don't necessarily tell the whole truth. They're not lying. They're just probably not sharing.
Can shift it a little bit.
But NASA's not doing that.
Yeah.
And it's NASA that came up with the research that says human beings need absolute minimum 8 hours sleep, 8.5 hours sleep, between 8 to 8.5 is what NASA said. And it takes on the average 23 minutes a night to go to sleep. So you factor in the 23-minute prelude, 8.5 hours, head on the pillow, you're right at 9 hours.
Yeah. And you're saying that the 7.5 to 9 is the most productive in restoring the brain, correct?
That's the critical, particularly for us in this Western stress zone, that we don't live under physical stress. So stress defined. So people talk about good stress, bad stress. And there is good stress, but it's not what people think it is. Simply defined, good stress is any stressor that lasts for less than 2 weeks. Any stressor. If it's less than 2 weeks, it's good stress because it'll do all the effects that God designed to make you run fast, get away from that lion, do that work in battle, and swing the sword and fight hard and run fast and think fast and respond quickly and be in motion and be in gear and feel on top of your game and feel good. So,
but that pastoring job is not just 2 weeks, right?
Nor is hardly any stress in America.
Yes.
So we're built to handle 2-week stress. But after 2 weeks, then all the positive reaches the peak and it turns to negative. Again, that's why Arch told the city of New York, here's what the chemistry does in your body. And this stuff, Ryan, can't be beat. People think, well, that's not that way for me. A preacher will say, well, this is my life. This is how I live. But then the question's asked, do you know the second greatest fear known to the human being? And the answer is, well, it's public speaking. And this is how I live. How often do you do a wedding? Well, I do a wedding once a week. Some pastors will do that. And so, well, do you have to have your act together when you're doing a wedding? Do you have to be thinking about the next piece on the program? Do you have to think about what comes after the vows, what comes before the vows? Do you have to have, you got maybe notes in front of you, but do you have to be on top of your game? And the answer is yes. And so it helps us. Stress is good when it's less than 2 weeks. But when it's chronic, and chronic stress is anything past 2 weeks, that is bad stress. So the way to manage it, one little piece, sleep's top priority. And I don't know how far we want to go with all this because there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
But that's the reason why every pastor needs 3 weeks out of the pulpit, 3 consecutive weeks out of the pulpit once a year. Because it takes...
That almost becomes even a carrot, like you were speaking of earlier.
Oh, yeah, it is. And it feels good. Takes a week to get unplugged, to figure it out. Oh, I've been under stress. Hey, it feels pretty good not to have that stress load.
Yeah.
And then it's a second week of healing. But you need the 3 weeks because if you're back in the pulpit on the second week, if you do 2 full weeks away, and if you're back in the pulpit, then you lose the whole second week because the gear's already working. Yeah. You got to be back at it. So you need to be out of the pulpit 3 weeks.